Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, March 24th, almost the end of Q1, my friends. Time to get busy. I am a sales coach and trainer. If you don't know me yet, I help individuals and organizations achieve measurable and sustainable sales increases internationally. And I founded the Sales Pro Network as a place where we can elevate the profession of sales, where salespeople can come and hang out, network with each other, ask questions, get great advice. And every Friday at 10 a.m., if you've been with us at all before, you know that I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And of course, once again, I did not let you down today. Before I introduce our guest, if you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook but have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's just going to say Facebook user, so please include your name. If you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And if you have any questions for our guest today, please put those in the comments and I'll make sure to pass them along. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Daniel Andrews. Daniel is the Chief Disruptor, I love that title, at Network in Action International. Good morning, Daniel. How are you today?
I'm really good. Thank you very much for asking.
Really excited to have you here. Let's see. I'd love to be connected to Dan, Jeff Goldberg, please and thank you. Well, okay, terrific. Somebody wants to be connected to you, but we don't know who you are. So if you name in the comments.
I'm still trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to put my LinkedIn URL in that comments because
we'll get to there.
Anyway.
Could you maybe give us the 2 or 3 minute version of your background? What brought you up to this point?
Sure, and I will try to tell as quickly as possible. I'm living in Columbia, South Carolina, which is my hometown. Grew up here, finished high school, went off to college in Atlanta, Georgia. Picked up a summer job, moved back here, continued with that summer job for another 13 years, for a total of 15 years with Cutco Cutlery, which is direct sales, and is lead based, meaning you have to get referrals from Mrs. Smith to her neighbor, her friends, whatever, to make that work. And so I thought I understood networking. When I moved to St. Louis in 2003, I switched to B2B and crashed and burned because I did not understand it. And if I get a moment in this to tell the story of when the light bulb went on, but I realized that I had to learn how to build trust and then borrow trust, which is the definition of network building and relationship building in my world, to succeed at B2B. It actually failed so miserably I had to take a job for the only moment in my adult life. I've been successfully self-employed for 35 years, 49 if you count the lemonade stand in first grade. But figured it out, left that company, which I'm not suited for employment. It turned into that, I quit, you're fired, which I knew was coming anyway. So went back to the business that I had failed at because I didn't understand trust building and relationship building, made it work, moved it to Houston. Wheels came off my first marriage in Houston, moved back home again with the model I operate on now. So the best people to learn something from was the people that had to learn it themselves, right? Somebody who's naturally gifted at something can't teach you how to become good at it, right? If you're not natural at it, they don't have a lot to offer, but I had to learn it the hard way. So it makes me pretty good for coaching and supporting.
I got it. Good morning to one of my favorite salespeople, Ben Gibbs. He says, it's Friday again. Yes, indeed it is, my friend, which means tomorrow's Saturday. By the way, before we go on, if I could just point out to everybody, excuse me, and I just posted about this today, we're a week away from the end of Q1. If you are not on target, this is the perfect time to take a time and assess where you're at, what's worked, what hasn't worked, because you still have time to make changes for 2023. If you haven't set a goal for 2023, you're way late on that, but you can still do it. But if you're not a quarter of the way to earning your financial goal for the year, now is the time to take action, not in mid-November when I get lots of calls from people saying, Jeff, help me, I'm not going to make it to the end of the year. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's too late at that point. So take stock of what's been working, what hasn't been working, and make changes that you need to so that you can still pull out a huge year in 2023 because you still can do it. Good morning to our executive recruiter friend from Westbury, Don Levine. So you are a master networker, a chief disruptor at Network in Action International. How do you actually define networking and what's it supposed to be used for?
Sure. And just to be super clear, about my role in the world, the phrase, the brand name Network in Action is corporately owned. I am a franchisee of that. But as an independent operator, I get to put my own spin on things. And I've really added a fun extra spin. So I'm still inside my franchise agreement, right? And I'm a firm believer in what we stand for corporately at Network in Action. But I found that people can find value from some additional stuff. So I never use networking as a verb, because networking as a verb means whatever you already think it means. I will be radically unsuccessful at convincing you to redefine words that you already think you know the meaning to. If I say the word mom, Jeff, whose do you think of, yours or mine?
Both.
Right. What you've already experienced is mom. So if I say the word networking as a verb, what do you think of? What you've already experienced networking as a verb means. I use the phrase network as a noun. I refer to what I do as network building and showing people how to build networks. And the definition of network in that case is very simply this. I always spell it with a capital letter. My high school English teacher would joke, but I spell it with a capital letter to indicate I've got a very specific meaning, and it's this. Your network is the people that will return your call. As Suzanne Taylor King says, just because you're in their phone doesn't mean they will answer their phone. So network building is about finding trust, building trust, discovering if there's trust there, and using that correctly in a non-manipulative, non-transactional way to get to where you need to go and to help them get to where they need to go.
So if your network is, I think we need to be just a drop more specific. I mean, I could call almost any company in America today and somebody's going to pick up the phone. That's not my network, is it?
No, correct. Somebody that would, we'll put it this way, that would return your call or would accept an introduction from you without a lot of explanation, right? Really good example. Sarah and Sierra. I wish the names weren't so phonetically similar, but they were. I found some notes. I put them in a LinkedIn text thread together, and I said, Sarah, Sierra, I literally cannot remember why it was I wanted y'all to meet, but I wanted you to meet. And they both put a LOL and started trading scheduling links, all that stuff, because both of them knew me well enough to know that there had to be a reason, right? And that I don't create, weak introductions, right?
Got it. So the way most people look at it is networking is about getting and giving referrals. Are there other benefits to networking besides just referrals back and forth?
Yeah, yes, resources in general, meaning I might not provide you with a lead, Jeff, but I turn you on to a podcast or a podcast guest or a podcast that you can be a guest on, or a resource or a book that is going to elevate you, right? That's helpful. But if somebody's not in biz dev, and I think most people in your community clearly are, but if somebody's not in biz dev, they still need resources. Maybe it's networking inside their organization, maybe it's networking outside the organization, but we still want to support and be supported. Right. I mean, I can't deal with corporate because this whole thing about, somebody playing favorites or prioritizing somebody else's needs, over yours, even if you're further in the hierarchy, I can't. I'm not cut out to be anybody's employee. I can't. But I get that inside those organizations, those things exist. So the relationship building and the trust building so that you can effectively, correctly, ethically get what you need and get to what you need, within or without, inside or outside your organization is critical to any role, in my opinion.
Yep. I've been in one networking group for 18 years, and a very substantial portion of my business comes from it. But it's not just the referrals. It's a community that I belong to. It's a group of people I can go to who are each experts in their industry, and I can get advice. I think you use the word community. It's a feeling of community. I also get business intelligence. One of the things we often say, or the facilitator says in our group, is our group is kind of like Vegas. What happens in the group stays in the group. And more than once in 18 years, I've mentioned I'm looking at doing business with XYZ or somebody else, and they'll say, "Oh, be careful. They don't pay on time, or they're going back." It's a great. It's more than just I've got a referral for you and you've got a referral for me.
Correct. Meaning over time, if you're in a built-in community, a group, as you choose to use that phrase, it should function frequently as a business mastermind, as a peer-to-peer, right? As a if that's not available to you, then the trust isn't there, and if the trust isn't there, then you don't really have a relationship. It's transactional, which is fine, and you can get business from transactional connections, but you can tell the difference, because will people say the hard things or ask the hard questions? And if the answer is yes, then that community has trust.
Yeah, well, and my feeling is if the trust isn't there, there aren't going to be referrals anyways. I've been doing this a long time, maybe not as long as you, but I find quite often people join a group and they want to get referrals, so they have to give referrals, give to get, of course, but they're a little too loose with it. And I believe that trust is the essence of the whole thing. I've told many people, look, you seem like a nice person, but I don't know you well enough to refer you yet. Just because you show up at the meeting of the group I've been in for a long time and you give your brief commercial,
Don't
that doesn't
mean
mean anything to
squat.
me, because every time I make an introduction, I love making introductions. I love helping people, and I love getting help too. But every time I make an introduction, who am I going to introduce you to? Well, I'm introducing you to my clients and my prospects and my business associates, and
And
these
your
are
network, right?
my
Capital N
children.
network. Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'm very cautious about making referrals. I'm generously giving them, but if I don't get to know you and trust you, I'm not giving you a single referral.
Correct. And I think what you have to look at, there's a number of things. Number one is it's okay to introduce a connection to your network as long as you reveal them to be a connection. Hey, I met Jeff the other day and he works in the space that you're asking me about. He and I communicated quite well on our Zoom chat. I think you two should explore whether or not there's some magic, as opposed to the introduction that Suzanne sent to me and Ruben. She said, y'all should connect. That's it. I mean, the whole thing. I could pull it up on the screen. It'd make you laugh. And I texted, I know better than to argue with STK. And Ruben said, me too. And he booked, right? you
Yeah.
know, right. But you've got to elevate to that point. And I actually, I won't take the whole moment here, but I do believe that effective network building requires two elements. Number one, relationship, which includes trust, meaning you can't have relationship without trust, and a strategy. And I don't mean a strategy as in a system. I mean an intentional approach to building trust and relationship. And rather than subsume quite a bit of this having this conversation, I'll throw into the Facebook link. I'm not sure how to get to the other links here on StreamYard, new to me, but in the Facebook room, I'll put a link to a evergreen Eventbrite URL, which will shows when I host a 25-minute conversation between low value networking as a verb and high value networks as a noun. It's 25 minutes. It's very interactive. Everybody that watches it goes, aha. And it has a lot to say about one of those categories, because there's four main categories of leads groups, right? And what they're good and not good for. But the key is people go into this, and you said trust, and you've got to trust them, Jeff. And that's what I want to follow up on real fast. People are so busy trying to convince the other person that, like, we'll role, I'm going to say role play, but let's use names, me and you, right? I meet you in my leads group or networking group. Okay. And I'm like, Jeff, I'm the best at what I do. You need to send me business, right? And maybe I can convince you that's true. But the best referral relationships are ongoing. And the best ongoing referral relationships are sustained through mutuality. Meaning, if I haven't learned whether or not I can trust you, then I'm not going to support you with connections, referrals, resources, and prospects, which means both of us are going to pull away. Me for feeling guilty for taking advantage of you, unless I've got a really bad character issue, and you because you're not feeling mutually supported, right? So it's just as critical to me to ask better questions to find out if you, I don't want to say can be trusted, to give you the chance to build trust with me as it is for me to build trust with you. Because if there is a potential for what I call a role as a key referral partner, i.e. sustainable, repeatable, and ongoing, and durable, then we have to trust each other if that's going to work. And most people don't work on a model that's built around asking better questions and finding out if the other person can be trusted.
Yeah, and I can tell you that if you and I were to sit down to network with each other, and you started the conversation with, "I'm the best in the business, and you should be sending referrals to me," this is going to be a very short conversation. That's not how trust is built, as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's not. It's not. Right. And now here's what's interesting. Trust is borrowed. I was in a room this morning at 8:00. It's called a breakfast club. I thought it was another networking event. It's not. It's a breakfast club. Everybody stays in the main rooms, about a dozen of us, on full audio. I was the only one muted myself. And that was just to keep me from talking too much. Right. But everybody else is on full audio, full video, 12 people. They're talking about deep issues, ChatGPT, and the future of marketing, and why, masters the product, but doesn't master the marketing, all these deep conversations. I'm totally jamming in there. And Tom, who's been in the group for a long time, said, "Hey, by the way, Daniel's new to this room, but I just want to let you know," boom, boom, boom. Right. He has their trust already.
So you're
He said the same things about me I would want to say about myself. but it wouldn't mean anything coming from me because that's my first moment in the room.
Of course.
But
Well,
when
look,
Tom
it's the
says
same
it,
thing. It's the same thing in sales. If I tell you something, why should you believe me? I'm a salesperson. But if my customer tells you something, or I have a referral from somebody and they say,
referral
"Oh,
partner.
Jeff's the greatest trainer and coach in the world. You should absolutely use them," that holds a heck of a lot more weight than me, who has a financial interest in you believing that. It's going to work much better if we get that from somebody else. So,
Right.
go ahead.
Well, it's
Yeah.
not just the somebody else, although reviews mean a lot, but it's the fact that if it's somebody I already trust,
Of course.
right?
Somebody who
Right.
has that relationship of trust.
Exactly. I leave the house in the morning. Wife says, "Don't forget the gutters need fixing." As I pull into the neighborhood, I see or as I'm coming home from work, I see a truck go by with, we do gutters on the side, and I take a picture, right? So I've got the phone number. But as I pull into the neighborhood, I see that you, my next door neighbor, who I may or may not know that well, but you are my next door neighbor, has got a gutter truck in front of you just pulling away. I now have multiple sources for finding gutters, but I'm most likely to go next door to you and be like, "Did you like the work?" Right. And there's trust implied between us, and we know each other well because you and I are clearly a lot alike. We live in the same neighborhood. So obviously we have the same values.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but okay.
I don't either, but I'm just saying that's the way the human brain works.
Yeah. So, Daniel, you're the chief disruptor. What does that mean? What are you disrupting and how?
I'd like to disrupt what people do when they say they're going out networking. That's the idea behind that. I really want to disrupt the fundamental nature of the questions that they ask, right? Because I don't think the questions that we're currently asking people when we're networking, and I will never say the word networking without putting air quotes around it, or I will never write it without putting quotation marks around it. Um, here, I'll do it this way. People tell me all the time, "I'm good at networking," and I'm like, "Bet you're not." They're like, "Okay, what?" I said, I'll let you tell me. I have two questions. Your answers will reveal to you whether or not you're good at networking. Of all the adults that you know, and we'll role play, meaning you can give me a real answer, Jeff, if you would.
Sure.
Of all the adults that you know, what percentage of them could refer business to you?
Of all the adults I know,
Mm-hmm.
well, they all could.
Well, but probably in your field, it's kind of niche. Probably 50% come in contact with the sort of people that they could refer, right? Okay. So if you're niche like the professional mermaid, my client, right, 20%, right? If you're real estate, 80%, right? Somewhere in the middle, 50. Okay.
That sounds right.
Whatever number they give me, I don't care if it's 20, 50, 80, anywhere in between. My next question is, what percentage not even frequently, but consistently refer business? And the answer is always less than 10% of the available total addressable market. Meaning, if they said 80, it's 8. If they said 50, it's 5. If they said 20, it's 2. And I go, aha, you're good at making friends. That is not the same as building a network, right? The phrase we've all said 100 times, heard 1,000 times: people do business with folks they know, like, and trust. What's the most important word in that sentence?
Trust.
Nope. Most important word in that sentence is business. It's a trick. We've been talking about trust for the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's the last word in the sentence. It is the most important of the three, but the most important word in that sentence is business. Otherwise, you're just making friends. Not a bad skill to have, but if you're at the event, if you're on the clock, if you're at work and your goal is to get more business, and all you're doing is using a model of finding out if Fred's the kind of guy I want to go bowling with, you're absolutely not paying attention whether or not Fred is the sort of person that you would give referrals to or receive referrals from. There's people I won't receive referrals from in this world.
Got it. So, what's the difference between network and action and most traditional or other networking organizations?
I would say that network and action, and by the way, it's always made up of the people, meaning I don't really care what your brand name is, right? If the people have the right vibe. But of all the brands that you can go out and do some networking under, some of them have a more consistent theme behind them, right, in terms of philosophy. But I personally think that most networking groups, I refer to them as leads groups because that's all they are. There are two elements that I feel have to be there in order for me to effectively build a network. One is intentionality, as opposed to the happy hour where there's no plan, right? Intentionality and relationship. Now, these leads groups have a high degree of intentionality. It doesn't show up as strategy, it shows up as system. But you've been to these, right? They've got a system, don't they? That thing is programmed down to the minute. They've got a system. So there's intentionality is high, but the relationship's not there. It's transactional. And the way you know it's transactional, there's plenty of ways to tell, but the best way to tell is when you're not on the roster, your name never gets mentioned out loud. And if that's part of their system, then you are buying reasonably durable transactions, but you do not have a long relationship. If whether or not you get a referral is predicated entirely on whether or not your name's on the roster, that is a transactional environment. No matter what you call it, it is transactional at the core.
So you mentioned this a couple of times already, lead group. What's a lead group as opposed to a traditional networking group? And are lead groups a good way to network?
Well, I say leads group, and that's what I use to define what most people call a networking group, because they're not truly building relationship, right? Again, I get kind of touchy about the word relationship, and I can get into a lot of good detail. I'll throw it into the Facebook chat. I've got a 25-minute section that I do about once a week on the difference between high value and low value, right? And that's one of the things I spend some time on. But it's not a bad way to get business. Again, not a great way to build a relationship because the people in there aren't interested in that. You're expected the minute you show up to get and give business. You have not yet determined if they're trustworthy, Jeff, as you talked about. You're like, no, just because you're new in the room doesn't mean anything yet. And a lot of these groups, that's supposed to mean everything. The minute you sit in that seat, bam, you're on, right? And it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And you get a lot of bad transactions that way, and you damage your reputation that way, if that's the case. So, the leads groups are a great way to get business. The metaphor that I use very consistently is they will give you training wheels, but they will break your legs. They have no interest in you pedaling on your own. I have a model of teaching people the skills that they need to graduate. Now, we don't have a cap and a graduation ceremony, but I anticipate that people will move away from me after a year and a half or 2 years. Because if they built trust in the room and they've leveraged that trust to meet people outside the room, the size of the number of people outside the room will always be bigger than the number of people in the room. If you know how to meet the Jeffs of the world, build trust, and get to Jeff's network, then what does Jeff's network care if Jeff and I, have the same lapel pin on every Tuesday morning at 9:30? They don't care. Right.
Okay. I think many people either don't know or have forgotten that LinkedIn was originally designed to be networking in the virtual world. Is LinkedIn still good for networking? Is it a good idea, or should all networking be in the real world?
I think LinkedIn is great for finding. It's kind of like a happy hour. It's great for finding the people that you want to build a relationship with, right? Communicating digitally. It's great for maintaining relationship. I see a great post by Jeff. I'm going to comment. I'm going to repost it. Jeff's a good guy. He's got good stuff. Find him out. Okay. But in terms of building trust, I think that requires a conversation. Now, can it be done in the context of that breakfast club? Yeah, a little more slowly. There are 12 in the room. If I met with them long enough, I might eventually trust all 12. I presume they're implied to be trustworthy because the people that I do trust that are in the room, right? That implies something. So I'm inclined to give them trust, but still, I got to kind of learn a bit about who they are and whether or not they're the best one to do what they do for the people that I know. But I think you can grow your number of connections. I think you can start to figure out who you want to build relationship and trust with. But I personally think whether it is digital, i.e. a Zoom call, or whether it's a live coffee, breakfast, lunch, whatever the case may be, you've got to spend some time talking to people because so much is nonverbal. So much involves the ability to ask the questions that you want to know the answers to that someone else may never ask, right? And find out how they respond to that. I mean, it's literally your job interviewing. You're interviewing for a role in my business. I'm interviewing for a role in your business at the same time, Jeff, of trusted referral partner, right? So you've got to be able to do that personally. Now, that doesn't mean skin to skin where we can shake hands. It can very well be digital. That's our relationship so far. It's been purely digital, but it hasn't been purely what do they call it? Asymmetrical, right? Meaning it's not just a bunch of text back and forth on LinkedIn, right? Yeah. I don't think. Yeah, it's great for maintaining and finding and being aware, but trust comes from conversations.
Yeah. You can certainly reach out and meet people on LinkedIn, but you've got to have that actual conversation. I mean, to me, a part of any one-on-one or whatever they're called in the groups that you run, it's really truly getting to know people. And that's, tell me about your life, tell me about your family, tell me what you believe in, tell me what you like, what you don't like. And I don't want to do that on chat all day long. I love chatting, but really I want to have a cup of coffee with you or a conversation with you, break bread. That's where I find the real
Mm-hmm.
connections come from. And speaking of connections,
Mm-hmm.
you offer something called connections coaching. What is that?
Mm-hmm. That's people that aren't in my community, but still want to be supported with a roadmap. There's one principle, 7 tools in the toolbox on how to build trust with people who are not your customer. We all have a model, or we can get one from the sales trainers of the world on how to build trust with people that are a prospect that you want to convert to customer. And we should be getting some referrals from customers because a pretty large number of our customers should trust us. Now, whether or not people are maximizing that ability is a whole separate conversation, probably more suited for you than for me, because you're talking about the customer journey. But I'm talking about how do you build trust with people who are not going to be your customer and you're not going to be theirs. And it's not that hard, but you have to be handed typically a roadmap. You've got to be shown, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how you can find out if they're trustable, this is how you convince them you're trustable, this is how you maintain the relationship, this is how you plan for it, this is how you create the right introductions, this is how you ask, right? A whole bunch of this stuff that's in there. So connections coaching, I've upgraded the name at the advice of my coach, and it's called Ninja Network Building Skills. And but it's just a cute name because I like the name of it, Ninja Network Building Skills. And it's one principle and 7 tools. And some people want a group coaching format, some want an individualized coaching format, some people want what me and a partner have created called a lifetime coaching format, right? You can pay once and have me for the rest as long as I'm senile and breathing. You got me, man.
We got a question for you. Somebody's asking, we don't know who you are, but Daniel, how do you do all of this relationship building on Zoom or Teams, via video conference, where you don't feel a real connection? You can't have a cup of coffee across the country. Well, you can each have one, but I guess whoever, any advice?
Yeah, I think that, go back to the days of COVID when some of us still were compelled to leave the house, right? I might meet you for coffee, Jeff, and still not shake your hand. Right? When Steve Weber taught me back in my company, it's the spiritual, right? The high five where we don't actually touch, right? The elbow bump, the little dance we used to do whenever we're high fiving or fist bumping, and then we mistakenly punch a guy in the face, right? So, right? To me, Zoom is the same way. I think you can build connection. Now, do I necessarily think that I need to be able to stand in full body so you can see all of me in order to do this? No. But if this is all I can see of your video, right? Or if you got yourself video off, right? Then I'm not being, there's so much that's nonverbal, but I think the quality of this conversation is fundamentally no different than it would be, right, if we were meeting at a coffee shop. It's elevated in my experience because if one of us excuses ourselves to go to the bathroom at the coffee shop, the other one's sitting there scrolling Facebook on our phone. Whereas here, I'm like, cool, I'll put you on mute. I'll answer 3 emails. I'll get work done. Come back in a minute, Jeff. I'm good. That's awesome. So I think as long as you've got the video element going on, I think you can read what you need to read. And you need, if you're asking better questions. But yeah, I do get that personal vibe feels a little different. But, I'm not trying to pursue a romantic relationship with the Jeff Goldbergs of the world. I'm looking to figure out, can we trust each other, right? And where are we going?
Absolutely. And by the way, that was Don Levine, our executive recruiter from Long Island, who was asking that question. And
I need to talk to Don. You and I need to spend some time.
You and Don, okay. Don's a great guy, really terrific guy. I'm pretty sure that everybody in this group, the Sales Pro Network, is in sales. But if somebody's not in sales or not in business development, is there still a reason to network?
I think so. And Don asked a good question, which we'll address too in a second. If you're the leader, I say that I'm not in charge of the show. You are. I think there is because, and I kind of touched a little bit on it early on. You still need resources from your network, right? Whether they're internal to your company or external. Relationships matter. Trust matters. And I think, what things do we want to be aware of? The new initiative, the upcoming layoffs, right? And if you've proven to be somebody that's trustworthy, you may get the word through the grapevine about the new initiative, the promotion, the job that's going to come available, and that they want an internal candidate, that the layoffs are looming. All of that stuff can come your way if you've proven that you're trustable. In those cases, it means keeping your mouth shut, right? But, I think most of us want to have resources. So the relationship building still can be done, in that context. Now, okay, cool. Can I address Don's question? Because I think he's
Sure,
got a good
please,
question there.
please.
Sure. Okay. Again, your show, man. I don't want to
No, 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 take
take
it.
control here. Okay. Yeah, you can't work the room or pick out someone to talk with. Okay. If you're in digital networking groups or networking events, and they're not putting you in breakouts of a max of 3 people, then they're doing it poorly. You can refer them to me. I can coach them on how to do that well. Once you get to 4 or more voices in a room, you're already starting to lose voices. And if you don't believe me, watch. The next time you're in a networking and they do breakouts and there's 4 or 5 or 6 in the room, watch how many people actually speak up and how many of them don't say a word or only say very little and then get quiet. That doesn't mean they don't have anything to say. It just means it's not worth it to them to interrupt the rest of the team to get something done. So, so I pay attention to some of the body language there, right? I look at titles. Most people just dump so much information into the chat box, right? I put one link in the chat box, my LinkedIn connection. That's it. That's it. Because I number one, I want control of who I engage with. There's several people on this call. I mean, Don's one of them. I want a 20-minute quick connect. I've got a 20-minute Zoom link, right? That's what I start with. I call it my first date because if we like each other, we can have a second date. Right? I'm not putting that in the chat box. Not that these people aren't great to meet with, guys, but my calendar would be booked out through 2025 if I did that. Right. And again, I'm not trying to imply I have more value than them, but I've got to maintain that. But I'm looking at titles, right? I'm looking at the way they engage. It's the same way I would quote work a room. Now, having said that, I try not to be exclusionary about who I get to know. If I'm in a room, a big room or a small room, 3, 4, 5, 6, breakout room. If I'm at a happy hour, I still want to meet people because I'm not so exclusionary. When I talk about quality over quantity, I'm talking about my ultimate network, right? But I'm willing to meet almost anybody because they may not have direct value to me in that moment. But what if they're this person that the Don Levines of the world or the Jeff Goldberg needs to meet? And I skip them because I could read on their name tag that I didn't want them, right? I don't want to buy what they're offering and they're not going to buy what I'm offering. I still want to meet as many people as possible because that increases my value to the rest of the world, right? And when I have a resource that I need from you, Donna, and you realize that I've sent 4 people your way, you're like, oh, I'm going to go the extra mile, right? I did a huge, huge, huge life-changing series of favors months for a friend of mine. I needed him to cover something for me at 10 a.m. this morning so I could be here with you. But the trust is there, right? I've added enough value to his world that he's like, yeah, I can step in and fill that gap for you at 10 a.m. so that I can be here with you.
Yeah. And if you're only willing to network, now I'm doing it like you do. If you're only willing to network with people who you believe could buy your product or you would want to buy theirs, you're absolutely doing it wrong. I mean, you're the expert, but as far as I'm concerned, if you came to a networking group with the intention to sell the people in the group, you're absolutely in the wrong place.
I think the people in this room probably are way more professional than that, right? But we've been the victim of that. And the challenge with your average happy hour networking or even coffee hour or open networking, the challenge fundamentally is that most people don't have a model. They've never been given a model of how to relate to somebody in a manner other than, will you be my prospect or will I be yours? Do I need what you have? Do you need what I have? And so they move through the room in one dimension. They don't have a bad intention. They don't have a bad heart. They might even be good talkers, right? They could be likable and personable, but they've only been given the dimension of prospecting. So I don't even see, and that's why I'm very careful about the word networking. Most of what goes on at an open networking event, a happy hour, coffee hour, whatever it is, isn't networking, it's speed prospecting. They are not building relationship. I was in an event that I'm in very consistently. I'm ADD, so it's actually easier for me to pay attention if I'm on my phone scrolling Facebook at the same time. Nobody believes me, but it's a true story. So I'm scrolling through my Facebook. Guy walks in, meeting's already in progress. It's very casual. He walks over to me. He says, clearly, you know everybody in the room. And I said, why do you know? How do you say that? I said, it's true, but why do you say that? He said, because you're scrolling on Facebook instead of talking to anybody. He said, I need to meet Dirk Brown. Are you him or can you direct me? And I said, well, coincidentally, I frequently get mistaken for Dirk Brown, who's a movie star. No, I'm kidding. He's another guy that dresses in a suit, and that throws off the people in the tech world. We both dress in suits, and they think we're exactly alike. He's way better looking than I am. But anyway, I said, I'm probably one of the only people in the room that has Dirk Brown's cell phone number. What is it you need from him? Right? Because Dirk is network, but this guy's connection. And he told me, and I messaged Dirk, and I said, Dirk, there's a guy here that wants to connect with you. This is why. here's his number. Would you like, do I have your permission to share your number with him? Now, if it's network to network, I'm in, right? But I don't know this guy yet. So I elevate Dirk, but this guy knew, and this guy knew that he hadn't built trust with me, right? He wasn't offended. He understood that's how it was going to go.
Yeah.
Right. But he knew to use the room. My point is he knew to use the room. He didn't walk up to me and go, you Dirk, or you Dirk, or you Dirk, well, and leave. He said, if you're not Dirk, can you take me to Dirk? That's using the room to get what you ultimately need.
Yeah, I'm constantly stunned by people who will come to the group that I belong to, and they'll end their brief commercial with, "And I'd love to do business with all of you." Duh. Of course, we'd all love to do business with each other, but that's not the purpose. I mean, to me, the purpose is everybody knows a bunch of other people, and I'm looking to turn the people that I'm networking with into my extended sales force, because I'm thinking about how can I help them. Look, I don't go on sales calls and think, how can I help the 39 other people in my group? There's a marketing guy and there's lawyers, all that stuff. But I am always listening for opportunities to make introductions that will help my prospect or client and my referral partners. Because to me, that's the essence of networking. It's not about, can I sell you what I've got? Can you sell me what you've got?
And I would think, then, I don't know if you're working, and we don't need to use brand names, but I don't know if you're working on a branded, networking group, or you've kind of built your own. But I would say that anybody, if you're seeing that happen very often, you have to speak to whatever onboarding / expectations were set coming in. Meaning, if they're still viewing it as a networking group in the sense of all the other networking groups they've ever belonged to, which means a leads group, then they're behaving perfectly normally and what's expected of them.
In the group that I belong to, that would only be a guest who would say that. None of the people who belong to this group. And
there we go.
This group's been in existence 35 years, and there are 2 people in the group that have been there that long. There's nobody who's going in there and saying, "I'd love to do business with all of you," except guests who occasionally show up.
In that case, when that individual leaves, you need to punch the person that invited them and say to them, number one, did you not set the expectation correctly? And number 2, don't invite people like that again. Right. You guys need to take control of that, because that's not the environment that you're looking to build. But in a lot of organizations, that would be expected.
Nothing that I would want to belong to.
That's my point. Nothing I would want to belong to.
Yeah. Do you use some kind of a roadmap or getting coaching in order to build trust and relationships? Does doing that become really contradictory? Because shouldn't we all just be ourselves?
I don't know that it does speak against authenticity, right? In a job interview, I would like to think most of us are being authentic, right? But we're still at one level, I don't want to say presenting even our best selves, although you probably should, right? But you still are being particular about which elements, right? When they say, tell me about, a success story, they're looking for a business success story, not how you organize the neighborhood, stay-at-home parents into a dog walking group, right? So that nobody had to pay a dog walker. That's not what they're interested in hearing about, right? So I think a model around elevated questions, right? A model that's based on so that you can learn about people and share and gain trust, right? Gain trust and discover trust, uncover trust. I think intentionality, a roadmap, a plan, a strategy, intentionality, as I said, around how to ask for referrals, how to set up the asking for referrals. Okay. And I'll give you 2 quick examples. These are the primary, I don't want to say primary. If I had a lead capture tool, if I had a funnel and a mailing list, and I wanted to harass the people that I met with infinite emails that they're never going to read, and the lead capture tool would be this. There are 2 questions that you absolutely have to ask if you want to accelerate your trust building efforts, your key referral partners. And here they are. Number 1, as you set up or start the first paired interview, which is my generic phrase for Zoom, coffee, breakfast, lunch, whatever. As you set it up or start it, it goes like this. Jeff, I wanted to meet with you today because I have an interest in learning enough about you, your business, what you do, and who you do it for, that I could potentially evolve into a consistent partner, a consistent source of leads, prospects, resources, and connections. And I would want you to do the same with me. Is that a relationship you're interested in pursuing?
Nice. Great way to
What
set
if he
that.
says to me, my brother-in-law does what you do, Dan? I can't give you a lead. Dan, I've got a business partner. It's a division that's not on my business card, but we actually have a whole division that does that. It's not going to happen. I'd like to know that sooner rather than later. Most people don't say that, but now Jeff goes, okay, I understand why Dan's meeting. He wants to give and receive. That's a relationship you can respect, particularly when you're talking about male, female, or romantic relationships. Guys and women aren't good at reading each other's signals, right? And if I've invited Cassie to lunch 3 months in a row and I have yet to declare my intentions, she's starting to wonder, doesn't he know we're both married? Right? Yeah, right? I need to be clear. So early on, second key question, towards the end of the first paired interview or after, meaning second, third, I wouldn't wait very late because you don't have to, but towards the end of the first, at the earliest or later, it's this. Under what conditions, Jeff, would you feel comfortable referring business to me? And you find out what their standards are. Now, there's 5 reasons that's critical, but the number one reason of the 5 reasons that's a critical question is because I now have permission to ask for referrals. When I have met that standard for Jeff, whatever that is, I can say, Jeff, we talked about the fact that whatever the standard was, that we could talk about who in your role belongs in my role, who's in your role at Exit belongs in mine. Let's do lunch this week and have that conversation in earnest. Can we do that?
That's a great question. In fact, I teach a similar question when people are selling, which would sound like this. Let's say you're a vice president of sales, and I want to sell you sales training. My question would be, hey, Daniel, I'm curious about something. Let's say you and I agree that we're going to work together. I never say, let's say you just decide.
Yeah.
Let's say we decide we're going to work together, and we're sitting here in your office 6 months from now. What would have to have happened over the last 6 months for you to go, wow, Jeff, I am so glad I decided to bring you in to work with my team? What would have to happen? What would they be doing more of? What would they be doing better? You tell me. Because when they give you the answer to that, they're telling you, here's how you sell me. Here's exactly what I'm looking for. So I think that's a brilliant question on your part. I have another question. I know the way I feel about this, but what are your thoughts on using finder's fees or affiliate programs when you're networking? I mean, some people would say that if I'm going to pay you to give me leads, won't people naturally give me more? What's your take on that?
I don't have opinions. I have data. All right. They gave a Nobel Prize to the guy that discovered that people don't do what you think they would. They call it behavioral economics, and it's a fancy name for people don't do what you think they would. They gave him a Nobel Prize. Okay. Like, wow, that's genius. Right. Okay. So here's my take on finder's fees. You are getting fewer referrals than you would be getting if you didn't have one. I'm not saying you wouldn't get any, and I'm not saying they're not profitable for you, but you're getting fewer referrals by using and emphasizing a finder's fee than if you didn't use one at all. Because people don't want your money. They want to be supported. They want to be supported. I tell people all the time, like, Dan, I've got an affiliate program, do we need to get together on this? Even when I was in insurance, where it was very common, like if you open the door for the employee enrollment and I had the product, I said, look, I'm trying to think of who my buddy was, Matt. I said, Matt, when it starts to feel uneven, if you think one or the other of us is getting taken advantage of, then we'll talk about splits. But in the meantime, I just want you to do your thing for me, and I'll do my thing for you. I'll introduce you, and you introduce me. And if one of us feels like we're being taken advantage of, we should speak up. But until then, I'm not worried about it. I have done when I host Zooms, I used to throw one question out there as people showed up early, right? Up until 2 after when I start the program. And the one question was, if you gave somebody the correct resource, introduction, quality prospect, what would you want in return? Short text or email, phone call or handwritten thank you note, finder's fee, gift card. I want to support it in the same way. 7% said finder's fee. 42% said, I want to be supported in a similar fashion. 6-to-1 ratio. You're insulting people by telling them that the introduction is only about money. Their utility to you is only about money. It's an insult. And it cheapens my introduction. If I introduce, right, you said as the sales guy with a financial interest in closing with IBM Corporation, right, you're suspect. If IBM Corporation even thinks that you're paying me a commission, Jeff, my endorsement is now suspect, as right up there with yours, right? You're getting fewer referrals if you're using clearly they're not universally applicable, or every company would have one. Nobody would have salespeople. Solopreneurs wouldn't need to pursue a sales function. We'd all be rich. So
Yeah.
clearly it's not universal.
Yeah, because of what I do, people know that I know a lot of people, and I do. I know a lot of people, maybe more than most salespeople, because I stand in front of sales teams regularly. But when I'm networking with people, I always tell them the same thing at some point during the first conversation. Look, I don't know how you work, but I want to tell you how I work. I don't take referral fees. If you want them, I'm happy to pay them to you, but I will not accept them. If I can help you in some way and help my prospect or my client or the business associate, that's why I'm going to make an introduction. And I don't judge you if you want referral fees. I simply don't take them. And I get offered them all the time. Become an affiliate, become this, I will pay you. I don't need your money. I'm a big fan of what I've taught my children, which is an acronym, ADTRT. Always do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yeah, do it right. If it's not win-win-win, why am I doing it? If it's designed to make me and you okay, and if can I take 90 seconds to tell a fast story?
Yes,
illustration. I'm in my hometown, came back here 6 years ago after 13-year absence, right? Established myself as a true network builder, right? And again, not networker, that's a verb, network builder. Guy that I've never met, belongs to one of these national leads groups, right? A very large one, came to me and he said, I don't think we'd ever met. He knew of me and I knew his name just tangentially. He walks up to me at a happy hour, right? Great. And he says, Dan, you've got the best reputation around here, for getting things done. And of course, I'm thinking, how come we've never had a conversation before? But anyway, that's fine. And he says, apparently I've made a really big mistake, but I don't know what it is. If I describe the circumstance to you, will you tell me what the mistake is? And I said, Mike, I'd be happy to do that. And I can use his first name because a couple years after this, he died tragically in a heart attack. So I'm not besmirching anybody's reputation. He said, I belong to a leads group, 100 people in it. Whole nother story behind that, but that's a bad idea. Anyway, 100 people in it. He said, I offered $1,000 to anybody that could get me an appointment with Billy Bob, the decision maker at XYZ Corp. I don't even remember the role. Mike's role was a staffing agency, a very niche staffing. Big industrial staffing, but I guess it was probably a plant manager. He said, I know 5 people in that room that could have given me the names, that got me lunch with Billy Bob. He said, I know there had to be more than 5, but I know 5 that could have got me lunch with Billy Bob for $1,000. Nobody, he said, it's been 6 weeks. Nobody's made a move. What did I do wrong? He said, well, Mike, you insulted him. It's okay. You're a Yankee. We expect that from you down here. I'm giving you a hard time, Jeff. I'm giving you a hard time. It wouldn't matter where you are. It's an insult. I said, number one, what you've told him is that I'm not interested in letting you get to know me enough to want to help me. I'm just going to throw $1,000 at you in place of trust. He's also complicated the relationship with Billy Bob. What if I'm the third person to call Billy Bob to try and set that lunch up? And Billy Bob goes, that's interesting. A lot of people seem to be highly invested in getting me to have lunch with Mike. And I go, well, I guess I can't qualify for the bounty, Billy Bob. So I might as well tell you, Mike put $1,000 bounty on this. I've damaged all these 5 people's relationship with Billy Bob at this point, and I've totally blown up Mike's chance to ever meet with him. Right? If you've got number one, if you've got a finder's fee, Jeff, give my customers a discount. The referrals I give you, because I will get more value out of the 5% that you mark on their discount, the Dan Andrews discount, month after month after month. Every month they look at that and go, hot dog, than I could ever cash in 5% checks, right? Number one, but number two, if Mike's convinced he needs to invest $1,000, how could he do that? How should he do that? One way, there's more than one, send Billy Bob an unsigned check for $1,000. Payee blank, unsigned. Billy Bob, if you will meet with me for lunch, at the start of the meeting, I will sign this check and make it out to the charity or organization of your choice.
Slick.
Same $1,000. And now he's started ahead of the curve with Billy Bob, not behind the curve. He's ahead. Same $1,000.
Here's what was going on in my mind. If those 3 people call and one of them admits to Billy Bob that, I might make $1,000 from this introduction. Well, if Billy Bob does agree to meet with, I think it was Mike. One thing I know for sure is Mike's desperate to meet me. He's willing to pay $1,000 just to take a meeting with me. So I'm going to negotiate pretty well against him.
Or ask for a straight out kickback, right?
Yeah. Not a fan. What's the Idea Lab community? I like the sound of that. What's the Idea Lab?
Sure. It's not my idea for the starters, but my friend Suzanne Taylor King runs this. It's an open, i.e. free, unpaid community of people that have got value to add to the world, right? She doesn't have a lot of gatekeeping on that. Now she gatekeeps her higher level communities, right? The paid communities that she organizes. But the Idea Lab for entrepreneurs, Idea Lab, I'll dig out my invitation link and put it in there so at least she knows where they came from. But it is people that are interested in sharing thoughts and ideas and uplifting each other. Okay, this is a community typically around coaches and experts, although there could be other roles too, that believe in an abundance mindset, right? Sometimes you get a bunch of coaches in a room and they're like, I don't know, they got a scarcity mindset. They're afraid that if Jeff closes a deal, that's a deal they're going to miss, right? And Suzanne has the absolute ability to make everybody in her world feel that they're her favorite, right? and she supports openness and conversations and a mutuality and a sense that we're all in this together, and it's just a great place to be. So I'll throw an invitation link. It's not my community. I'm not doing nearly as much actively there, but as I get video clips from things like this, I've done 5 in the last 3 weeks because apparently the notion that relationships are important is starting to catch on. I will be putting some fairly high quality content, into those spaces. So people, if they kind of be a neat way to consolidate all the information. Now, I will warn you, when you first sign up, go and turn off all the flipping notifications, turn them all off, every last one, because the last thing you need is your inbox blowing up and then you're mad at Idea Lab and then you don't pay attention anymore. And I really want you to pay attention. Just turn off all the notifications once every couple of days, log in and see what cool conversations are happening, what you can learn and what you can share. But it is a place to introduce yourself. As a new member, you have a little profile. You can talk about who you are, what you do. It's pretty fun.
Got it.
I'll dig up that link real quick.
You've mentioned Suzanne Taylor King a couple of times during this conversation, and I actually read online that somebody said she's possibly the finest person you could possibly know, and you agreed with that. So, who is Suzanne Taylor King, and why don't we all know her?
That's on you. And dang it, I'm looking for my invitation link. I guess you'll just have to go to Idea Lab, the number 4 entrepreneurs.com, and I'll find it if I can find my invitation link here in my list of key links. But anyway, man, it is so hard to describe. She's out of the Northeast. She's somewhere near Philly, I think. She's a great person at introducing. She's a great person at holding people accountable. She's a great person at creating communities, again, both paid and unpaid. She hosts a once a month networking event. She has a random generator on her Idea Lab that every week it'll say, you two should meet. Just she'll pull 2 people out of the directory and recommend that they meet. She's got a random generator built in there, which is fun because every now and then you get recommended to meet people you already know. You're like, okay, well, that's one thing I don't have to do this week. But it's a lot of fun. A very giving spirit, right? That's part of it. Easy to break the ice with. I do have written proof that I am her favorite, by the way. And she's actually asked me to stop creating a LinkedIn introduction. Last night she said, I need you to hold up on the LinkedIn introductions because I feel compelled to meet with all of them. I said, no, Suzanne, you don't. From here on out, I'll be clear who you need to meet with and who you simply need to invite to the Idea Lab. I said, but just being around your sphere, is enough. She goes, oh, thank you. But she said, literally, best introductions I've ever gotten in my life came from Daniel Andrews. You got to ease up for a couple of months. And I'm like, I will simply send them to the Idea Lab and let you meet them that way then. But I gotta dig my link out for that. But Suzanne Taylor King, we call her STK for short because that's a lot of syllables.
Got it. Well, if you are comfortable, I'd appreciate an introduction because perhaps she'd be a good guest to interview here. It sounds like she absolutely would be.
And the I might give away part of my secret, but this morning as I'm driving to the office, she's like, "Hey, I'm live on LinkedIn," and some person whose name I didn't recognize, who's big, she's a year-long waiting list to get into live on LinkedIn. She's like, "Can you be there at 10 a.m., say something profound and I'll highlight you." And I have no idea if this is going to get me in trouble or not with LinkedIn's terms of service, but my buddy who owes me, who can speak in my voice, because we've known each other 30 years, is logged in on LinkedIn under my name right now, commenting on this. Oh my God, please don't let LinkedIn see this. I'll get in so much trouble. I'm looking up at my screen to find that link for you guys because I definitely want to invite y'all.
You can always stick it into the Sales Pro Network later on if you can't find it now.
Yes, I will. I found it. I knew I had it.
One of the things I do when I'm preparing for these interviews, I always go to people's LinkedIn feeds and look at what they've posted. And earlier this month, you wrote a LinkedIn article and asked the question, does your productivity level stink? Which I thought was a very clever name for an article. It certainly caught my attention. What are some of your best tips for being more productive? Because I think we all want to be as productive as possible.
Right. And I wrote that right as a lesson to who? Right. This is me ruminating, right? And I turned it into a post. And the artwork on that, by the way, is from my good friend, Talon, by the way. I gave him credit for the artwork, but you guys should check the artwork that goes with it. It's pretty profound. This guy's really good. But anyhow, and he's a sharp businessman too. But what I have found works is time blocking. Time blocking. I have found that using a calendar linking program, I used to spend 10 minutes worth of my focus and attention trying to schedule a 5-minute phone call. I'm like, that makes no sense. I actually have links for a 5-minute phone call. And it's called 5 phones, so that when I send it to somebody, they know I'm asking for 5 minutes on the phone, right? Another key to productivity is a 20-minute first interview. Most of the people I meet, the shortest block on their calendar scheduling program is 30 minutes. Now, you take 20 minutes off my calendar, it takes 30 minutes off my calendar, because if I made you a promise, or if we are getting along so well, we need to keep it going, I've got 10 minutes on the other side. But if I talk to you, I promise you, I'll think of resources, people, introductions that you need to make, that I need to make for you. And I want to block my time in real time, so I don't get to the end of the day with a stack of paper that looks like this, which is promises that I've made to people, right? The check marks mean what? I completed my promises. Because why? Because I blocked time on the other side, right? The ones I don't want are the stacks of paper where I don't have the promises completed. And then my wife is giving me side eye because it's 6 o'clock and I'm still in a suit and tie. And for me, last productivity tip, you asked me about this before we started. For me, I'm dressed professionally until I'm done. That's me. Doesn't have to be you. That's me.
Yes, for those of you in the audience, I did ask Daniel when we got on what that red thing was he was wearing around his neck, because you don't see those very much anymore. And I was explaining to him about, I love that. If there's one good thing that came out of COVID, it was that I don't wear suits and ties anymore, almost ever. But it's impressive that you do, Mr. Andrews. Absolutely. We only got time for one more question. I've got, as you know, about 75 more. So I think I want to go with this one. You recently quoted the actor, brilliant actor, Michael Caine, as saying, use the difficult. What does using the difficult mean? I thought it was very thought provoking.
Yeah. And of course, the LinkedIn post there, right, elucidates that a bit, right? But it's really the notion that kind of a martial arts, right? Use the situation against itself, right? Use your opponent's power against themselves, right? And this came out of, my awareness of his quote, right, which kind of consolidates some thinking. But my father, who was a fighter pilot, and think of Top Gun, not Maverick, Top Gun. Think Maverick and Iceman as father, right? Yes, that's what you get. A young man who's afraid that nothing's ever good enough. Late in his life, my dad said to me, there are no failures. Some lessons are more expensive than others. So use the difficult, maybe if you can't change or use your opponent's energy against them, or jujitsu the situation into something that you can leverage to your power, you can stop and say, what's the lesson here? Rather than call this a failure, why don't we just call this a very expensive lesson? What's the lesson? Now, I also want to challenge people not to become jaded, right? The lesson after an ugly divorce is not that people suck. It's that you need to water and tend to your relationship long before it hits the skids. My first divorce happened. The last chance that we could have saved it was about 5 years before we divorced. So the lesson isn't that women suck. The lesson is pay attention to your relationship, right? So make sure you're learning the right lesson. If you need somebody to help you figure out what that lesson is, anybody who's not you can help. A professional coach can ask better questions and speed that process up. Anybody that's not you, because as somebody said the other day, you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Absolutely brilliant. By the way, I hope I'm pronouncing Adrian's last name right. Adrian Chanot said, wow, that's awesome. He's excited to check out Idea Lab, and also says, win or learn, one way or the other. I'm going to share my screen now. Would you like to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to?
Yeah, and I want to give props to Adrian Chanot, who's a young man who really absolutely gets, relationship building. Typically, the youngsters, it's me, the cranky old guy. You don't have high expectations for the youngsters. I'll put it that way. They tend to surprise me because my expectations are low. Adrian is a young man who gets it, and he's created some powerful introductions for me already. Right, yeah. So there's stuff up there, right? I put that LinkedIn, the Eventbrite. I put that out there. Not really going to talk about Ninja right now, but if you guys feel like you want to learn about Ninja network building skills, book with my business partner, Natalie. She can cover the conversation quicker than I can, and she has more openings on her schedule. If you just want a short paid conversation, building a business plan for you, or trying to figure out how to maximize your time at Leads Groups, I do have some paid consultations on the TidyCal. There's my LinkedIn URL. And if you Google the name Daniel Patrick Andrews, I am apparently 1 million hits behind a bombastic parliamentarian from Australia. So I had to buy the domain danielpatrickandrews.com just so you could actually find me. But anyway, if you go there, it's a fairly basic website. My story brand coach is busy telling me it's all about you and not about the client. So it's going to be rewritten soon, but at least you can find out how to get me, right? And on one of those pages, you can see 40 testimonials from people that say that working with Dan is a good experience, right? So that's what it exists for. It's a showcase for all the testimonials I've ever gotten from all the different sources showcased in one place. That's really what that website exists for.
I saw them and it was impressive. And Daniel, there are people watching live today, but this is also going to get converted to a podcast. For those people who are not watching, how can they reach you? Is there a phone number or an email address that you'd like them to use?
I'm just so afraid of my inbox getting blown up. Start by connecting with me on LinkedIn. Right. Start with me on LinkedIn and we'll take it from there. If I accept your friend request, then you will see my email and my phone number. But as a courtesy to people, and this even applies to my wife, I'm like, why do you call me? Text me first, right? Not because I don't love talking to my wife, but because I'm so ADD that when my focus is here, you got to let me keep it there, right? Because you pull it away too soon. But let's schedule time to talk. I'm wide open to that. But let's do a reach out and kind of, pace this early on. Not because my time's more valuable than yours, but I've got a business to run. Y'all have a business to run. Let's pace ourselves here. But I would love, I think the best thing somebody could do is go to that Eventbrite link, and that is an evergreen URL. So even if somebody's watching this months later, go to that URL, watch one of these talks about low value versus high value. If you like the way that conversation goes, if you like what you learn there and go, I want to spend more time in quadrant 4, then you want to connect with me. Because maybe you're happy in your Leads group. Maybe you're happy at the happy hour. I don't know. Maybe you are.
Got it. I'm giggling here because I'm the exact opposite of you. When people text me and say, can I give you a call now? I'm like, why don't you just call me? Well, you just wasted my time. I ought to look at your text. So different strokes for different folks. Daniel Andrews, thank you so much for generously sharing your brilliance about networks and networking today. We'll say it the right way. And I'll end this as I always do. Oh, wait a minute. First, we've got somebody saying, this has been great. I didn't catch all, but thank you, Jeff and Daniel. So thank you, Daniel. And I'll end this as I always do. Please remember, guys, sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Daniel. Thanks again.